Good morning, everyone, again. My name is Don Pearson. I serve as the Chief Strategy Officer with Inductive Automation Software. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's webinar. I think we have a very good agenda lined up today, and we're going to leave ample time for Q&A so you can get a chance to actually look at that. Just a quick look at the overview for today's agenda. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview on some OEE fundamentals to give at least a little bit of background for those of you who maybe aren't certain, although I do know we have a pretty good group of educated individuals on the OEE and what it entails. And we're going to look at implementing OEE, some software tools, and then after that get into a summary and some Q&A on where we go from there. For starters, what is OEE? Basically, OEE is just a hierarchy of metrics that are used to monitor the effectiveness of manufacturing facilities. Software is, of course, commonly used to implement OEE, but it can also be done by pulling out your clipboard, manually using plain old pencil, paper, spreadsheets, and, of course, a certain amount of elbow grease to get it done. Why OEE, and why will we even be taking the topic up in today's webinar? I suppose these are a little bit rhetorical questions, but you can answer them for yourselves. Is profit important to your company? Are your competitors implementing OEE? How much more competitive advantage would your organization have? And how much more money could you save on capital expenditures? Why not OEE? I'm actually not actually saying these things to be sarcastic. It may be the case that your company is inherently just very efficient, and you may be so profitable that it really doesn't matter to you, so you're not interested in anything that's going to push in that direction and take a little bit of energy to implement. Some basic just fundamentals. OEE fits into the manufacturing execution system layer of your organization. And I think when you look at that particular layer, it was really a term that was coined first by AMR Research in 1992. And what happened really is manufacturing was reduced to a three-layer model, which was focused on the need to link the planning process to the control process. So at the top end, you'd say you'd have your ERP, you have your business systems, you have your second layer is your manufacturing execution systems. And then on the bottom, you have your control systems, including operator interfaces. So the idea, of course, was to bridge those two together and really make it possible, if you will, to create an ideal scenario. The ideal scenario has got your ERP at the top, your financials, your forecasting, inventory, procurement, order fulfillment, all those things that you're looking at across your enterprise to really add efficiencies to that enterprise. Then the MES layer. That's your production scheduling, recipe, changeover management, OEE downtime, quality, statistical process control, your SPC approach, preventive maintenance, auditing batch, all those things that really are the execution of your manufacturing process. And, of course, you have the plant floor. And that's your machine control, HMI there, process control, operator interfaces. And really the HMI software manufacturers have somewhat entered into this market with what I would say was questionable success. Cost becomes a big issue, and functionality another big issue. And ERP software companies are attempting to include some of the MES functionality in their offerings. But really, it's really needed that we go much further than that to try and actually really look at what can be the full build-out of the MES layer, and a piece of it that we're going to talk about today, which is the OEE. In a nutshell, what are we talking about? It's a hierarchy of metrics that are used to monitor the effectiveness of manufacturing facilities, common method to measure efficiencies across industries and different types of manufacturing. It can be used for machines, of course, and also for processes. It doesn't really tell you how to improve efficiencies. That's why downtime, is typically combined with it. But if you sort of think about it, if you think about running a production facility without tracking efficiencies is sort of like running a 401k without tracking your portfolio value. Different facilities require different ways to look at that quality, but I think there's some overall view of the calculation that is a good departure point and sets the table for today's discussion. So OEE takes into account three isolated factors. availability, performance, and quality. And each one of those, of course, can stand on its own, but combined they provide a very accurate picture of production line's effectiveness. So OEE availability, that's really your uptime, excluding scheduled downtime periods such as breaks. Performance, represented by the production rate while the production line is running, compared to the design production rate for that production line. And then quality, how many good units are produced compared to the total units that started being produced on the production line. So when you're really calculating OEE, you're looking at a combination of the OEE availability times the OEE performance times the quality that comes out. And just one other term for purposes of introduction here, and that's TEEP. OEE represents the equipment efficiency during production run. But if you look at total effective equipment performance, or TEEP, that represents the equipment utilization against a calendar period. So loading is the ratio between the scheduled time for the production line and process and the calendar time. So TEEP really is total effective equipment performance, which is your loading times your OEE. How much of your capacity are you really using? So downtime tracking is begin and end time that production line is not producing a product. From beginning of not producing to ending of not producing is your downtime, and you have to assign a reason for each downtime event. With that as just a little background on some of the principles that are going to be talked about and dealt with today and the pragmatic view that we're taking of that, actually I'd like to turn it over to Tom Heckman. He is the MES channel sales engineer here at Inductive Automation, and I think you're going to be pleased with not only what he's able to share with you, but also Bill Clark as a customer using it and give you a good opportunity to ask a lot of questions. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Don. Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges in implementing an OEE system, because it's really a lot more than just installing software and start seeing what your efficiencies are. OEE downtime is really just a tool to help you track where you're at, and other things have to take place to fully make it a value to your company. So some of the things I'm going to talk about is determining a return on investment and determining requirements, what your company really needs. There's all kinds of different processes and company requirements and such, so we'll talk about that a little bit. Technical issues, workforce issues, and then actually closing the loop to improve the efficiencies, which is the bottom line, why you would be installing or implementing a OEE downtime system. So starting out on return on investment, this is kind of like cart before the horse a little bit. And it's like, if you don't know what your efficiencies are and how much you can improve them, well, what kind of return do you get? You don't really know. So I kind of recommend, that you gain experience on one or two production lines, and you work through a lot of these implementation issues on those one or two lines, and you'll learn a lot about your process. You'll actually learn probably some of the things about your company and the workforce at your company. You'll make sure all the technical issues can be solved and you can accomplish what you want. And, that's all the bottom line there, reduces risk. So you're not putting an implementation in across the entire plant and then finding out you need to go back and make changes to it, or it doesn't work out so well in your facility or what have you. So there's pretty kind of a risk analysis here. Start out, learn from one or two lines, and then start rolling out to other lines. And the other big important thing that will give you is you'll start seeing how much improvement on those one or two lines that you're seeing. And you can actually get a much more accurate return on investment and realize that the investment is worth doing. And keep in mind that investment is just not dollars and cents. It's much more than that. It's people's time, training, just the meetings, coordination. There's a lot of things that that tie into this besides, oh, this is just a capital project and we put it in. Determining requirements, this is kind of always interesting too, because you run into all types of people in your workforce. You might run into those that have too many opinions. They're telling you everything it does need to have, desires, and their considerations, and so on and so forth. Then you might run into the complete opposite, where people don't have opinions. Until you present something, then suddenly they speak up and tell you, what they want at that time. Another thing that I've seen is companies just wanting to implement it, and they're kind of working on their own without involving other departments. And OEE downtime really is something that involves multiple departments. It involves scheduling a lot of times. It involves maintenance, so much more than and management. So it involves a lot more than just the production department tracking their efficiencies, if you're going to close the loop and improve efficiencies. I've also seen where companies just start going crazy with all the things that they feel they need and speculation of what they need, and so on and so forth. And really, this goes back to implementing on one or two lines and really narrowing down exactly what you do need. And up front, though, if you keep your requirements very focused, I think that really helps instead of getting into too much detail and getting bogged down in too many details. I think it's important to have, general requirements like, what are your IT requirements? Do you want it to use standard databases? Do you have terminals out there on the line that the operators are going to interface with, or is it just going to be an automatic system that doesn't? How the production department, are they going to be entering in schedules, or who's going to be entering in schedules, or is the schedule coming from the ERP system? General, without getting into too many details, but keep it general on the reports. What type of information would you like to get out? For example, we want to look at our OEE or downtime by operator or by maintenance crew, those kind of details in general sense. This way you can select a system that will fit your requirements. And you're going to, as you go along, these requirements are probably going to change. And plus your processes, manufacturing processes are going to change as well. So, one of your requirements should really be that it's a flexible system, and it's going to change with your manufacturing processes and change with your requirements as you go forward on OEE downtime. Technical issues. Some facilities may still have some hardwired equipment. In these cases, small controllers can be put in to fill the functions required for OEE downtime, which is usually detecting a downtime reason and then maybe production counts. Some industries kind of have inconsistent production rates. In other words, they're not dealing with bottles or gallons or something that's a common, consistent rate. It might be logs, and you might have big logs, you might have small logs, so that really varies how many that you can put through. But I bring that up because, in that case, downtime tracking and availability and possibly quality could still be used, and you just wouldn't use the performance aspect of OEE downtime. So there's ways to still benefit on OEE downtime concepts, even though you might not be implementing all of it. Source of production information, that could be difficult to get, but are we going to have a schedule, and are we going to get that from our ERP system? Do we have to get the IT department involved to coordinate that? So those kinds of things, you know, or is the production department supervisors or so on and so forth going to enter in the schedule? Those kind of technical issues should be solved. Reliability is a big factor, because if you put in a system and the information isn't accurate, then that has, the credibility isn't going to be there with the system, with the people viewing the data, whether it's management or production folks or so on and so forth. And I think that the best way to do that is really do a lot of testing up front. It's easy to put in logic and PLCs and configuration on the OEE downtime system, and then find out that, you know, it's not getting the counts correctly or detecting a downtime reason correctly. So it's just kind of run through the system and make sure it's working right, and kind of go through a commissioning stage to make sure the data is as accurate as possible. That's another good reason to start out on 1 or 2 lines too, because then you can shake down a lot of those issues before you roll it out to the remaining areas of your facility. Oops. Workforce issues. You know, commonly operators and even production department supervisors and such, they may run into a reluctance to being tracked. I've seen this in a number of cases, and you really have to keep it positive with them and send a clear message to them. No, this is really about improving efficiencies. So don't, we're not going to beat you up in a meeting because your efficiencies were low today. We're going to discuss why were the efficiencies low. Is it a technical issue? We're going to make plans to fix that technical issue. Was it a training issue? Maybe educate the operator so they better to handle that situation. Just make it a positive environment of, you know, closing the loop to improve efficiencies. I think, and what I've seen is that if you do that, the operators really come around and they really like it, and even supervisors. Getting adoption and commitment to use the system. So if it does involve operator input into the system, getting them to actually, you know, interrupt their normal routine to come over to the terminal to enter in additional downtime information or notes, or just, you know, view how things are going. That type of, you know, commitment, or starting a production run, ending a production run, if you put in a system that requires that, that is, you really have to get that commitment. And that's kind of addressed, I think, with one, training, and then also the positive message that you give, that this is a tool to make their job easier, improve their efficiencies and stuff. It also requires a clear message, I think, from management to say that, you know, you need to use the system. We need to improve our efficiencies for the competitive market, and you know, so get on board basically. Improper or inconsistent use, that goes back to the training to make sure that operators really understand. You know, you can run into all types of operators depending on your facility. You can have some that maybe don't really understand what percentages are. So your training might even have to go back to cover that. And it also is, what information do you present to those operators? You know, maybe the operators don't even really want to know percentage. They just want to know how they're doing on their production counts and are they on track. So it depends on your individual installations and how you want to get that information to the operators. Improving efficiencies. So you get through, you have an OEE downtime system, you're getting the information out, now what? It's commonly called closing the loop. You're going to take that information, and that information has to be actionable. That information has to point you to some areas to focus your efforts to make improvements. It could be looking for correlations between different influences that affect your effectiveness. It might be the product you run. It could be a raw material vendor. It could be, technical things. It could be, just calibrations in tuning of a line and stuff between the machines and such. I think one of the best ways to do this is have regular meetings. Now, whether you involve everybody in the meetings or whether you have a team that focuses on improving your OEE downtime, you guys have to work that out on an individual basis, what works out best for your organization. But if you have a regular time that you get together and have meetings and you evaluate the data and you make some decisions of what actions you're going to take, what resources you're going to put to solving some of the problems, that team can also make a determination of, how much is it going to cost to fix this one downtime? Do we have to purchase the new equipment? Is it worth doing that? So there's some processes that you have to go through to determine that as well, and this team or group can do that. Also, you get information that you can provide back to raw material suppliers. So if you can give them a little bit of information, they might be able to make your job easier and make some changes on their end so that it runs a little bit smoother through your facility, the raw materials. Next, I'm going to show some software tools. You guys are probably tired of slides at this point, so we'll go take a look at something else here, software. This is just the demo of our software. It'll give you a little bit of some of the things to look for when evaluating software. Some of the things that should be included in the system. This screen here is an operator screen. In the case where you have an installation that is going to involve the operator, then you have to have a nice screen from them to interface with. Some of the things that it allows is to allow the operator to override the automatically detected downtime reason and select and give more detailed information. A perfect example of that is if you have a operator press stop button. Well, that's pretty generic, but they may have been, seen something that was going to cause a bigger problem if they didn't press the stop button. They can come in here and give further details. Maybe they cleared out the jam, and that's why they pressed the stop button. So this gives more accurate data. Gives their targeted production counts, gives the OEE information. This particular one allows them to start and stop production runs and so on and so forth. Production information is also good, so we can see where the blue line there is the actual production, the green line is their target or their OEE target that they should get to. So this could be a supervisory screen as well, showing the top downtime reasons as the run is running. So I've heard cases where supervisors monitor this, they see something that doesn't look too good, out of the ordinary. The supervisor actually goes out and focuses on the problem and resolves it. But operators, depending on your facility, operators may do that as well. Analysis is a real big thing. Collecting the data and having that available is one thing, but how do you pull that data out? And having it in a format that's presentable, having drill down type functions is, makes it very easy to go in there and be able to look for correlations and problems and such. Being able to view the data in different formats here. So we see total downtime minutes, and then we see the number of occurrences by the machine, and so forth. Having that in tabular data, being able to export that to Excel, that can be really nice. Being able to do multiple kind of cube comparisons where we could look at this by cell name, by operator. and we might be able to identify that an operator needs more training on a particular machine, and so on and so forth. And of course, you're going to have reports that just show, summaries of shifts and so on and so forth. May have scheduling, may not. Product codes to be able to set up your product codes and work orders, etc. I'm going to go over into the designer section here now of our software, and some of the things that we look for. You have your enterprise, you have your production site, different production areas. We want, we may have packaging, we might have processing, and so on and so forth. We look for a system that, it's easy to modify and make adjustments to. That doesn't require a lot of detailed work. So there I just added a new production line. All the settings are over here that are now available for that new production line, and so on and so forth. Once that production line is in place, then a whole wealth of information is available. There's line X that I added. So now we can start getting production rates by hour, our OEE values, and so on and so forth. So very supports maintenance of your system, because processes are going to change in your facility more than likely over time, and also your requirements of screens and production and stuff like that, the information you want to get out of the system. So we have all the screens here. You can actually make adjustments to, like here we have the operator control screen. We can add new information, labels, buttons, whatever else. If you want to put the line start stop controls on here, you could do so. Okay, so that's just kind of an example of software that is flexible, that can change with your system. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Clark, who has been very involved in our beta testing. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So anyways, let me go back here. So the benefits of software is the automatic tracking of production counts. So we're not having operators write down and so on and so forth. Historical storage, it's paperless. Real-time information, it doesn't take a week to get your information back. That kind of thing. So definitely there's a benefit versus using spreadsheets and paper and so on and so forth. Some of these things I covered, the analysis and reporting should be in there. Product codes should be available, configure lines, so on and so forth. More than just a historical reporting. People should be able to interact with it instead of just giving reports out. The whole idea is to get actionable data to the right people at the right time, and be able to integrate with other, MES or ERP systems, integrate with the plant floor, be able to access it anywhere from your network. That's a very important thing, including mobile devices. And I would recommend staying away from proprietary databases. You create a data island if you do that. Having just using your standard Microsoft SQL, Oracle, MySQL even, those industry standard SQL servers. Make it so you can tie in with other systems and just give you a lot more flexibility. And IT departments are very, very used to those and actually like those versus proprietary ones. It should be easy to deploy. It shouldn't require taking a CD or a DVD around to each of the computers every time you upgrade. And licensing is also something you really need to take a look at. You know, how many operators are going to be accessing it? How much does that cost? How's that licensing work? Okay, now I'll turn it over to Bill Clark.
Tom, I just want to interject something as you turn it over. Some people are already getting the idea, but there is a question tab on your console, which please feel free to use totally right now. Questions that you've got for Tom, questions that are coming up for Bill as he begins to share. We're going to allow plenty of time to be able to answer those. So I'll monitor them a little bit as we get to that point, Tom. But now you can turn it over to Bill. I just want to make sure that our audience knows. Ask us questions. Any direction you want to go, we're happy to go that direction. Just type them in. We'll get to them as soon as we start the Q&A section.
Okay. So I turn it over to Bill. Like I said, Bill was instrumental. He was a beta customer of ours, and so we could test out our software. And he'll have an opportunity here to tell his story of what it took to get OEE going in his plant. Bill, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Don. I work with our Diamond Culinary and Emerald Snack brands. And our challenge in those products is that our products frequently change and they continue to grow. And that requires a very high degree of flexibility in our production facilities. To meet those needs, we have a variety of manual and semi-automated and fully automated equipment. And so Diamond chose as a continuous improvement tool for standardizing production information. Chose OEE as a continuous improvement tool for standardizing production information. And that way we can make meaningful comparisons and decisions in those facilities. It's really a challenge when you've got different lines running different ways and you're trying to compare these things as apples and apples when really in real life they seem like apples and oranges. So OEE really helps us in that regard. We started looking at OEE a year ago, and we compared both canned and custom solutions when we started doing our research. We recognize that canned solutions are expensive and they tend to be pretty restrictive. On the other hand, the custom solutions, they get tailored to your needs, but they're really difficult to roll out as the lines and other facilities are different. So either solution really can make you pretty dependent on outside support services and ongoing expenses, and that just is a fee that keeps on coming as your production changes, which ours does. What we really wanted was we wanted something that would be simple. We could support mostly in-house. We could pay for right up front and then roll out quickly, and we wouldn't have a lot of ongoing expenses. So we began talking with Inductive Automation, who were interested in using our Stockton facility as a beta site for an OEE plug-in for ignition. We were already an ignition user, and we recognized several benefits. First, it would provide the proven tools of a canned solution, but we also felt that it would provide the flexibility and integration needs of a custom solution. So we kind of had the best of both worlds there. It would also give us a cost advantage of the inductive automation licensing and support, and we've really found that to be a real winning solution for us. We get terrific support through the inductive automation web interface, and we get to talk to the people that actually are hands-on with the code. Once we understood the concept of the new production module, we agreed to use one of our canister lines in our Stockton facility for beta testing. It took a few months to begin to kind of work through the real-world challenges of production, and as soon as we felt things were stable, we just recently did a rollout to a second canister line in our Fishers, Indiana facility. it was really interesting because the Fisher's implementation, it really gave us an opportunity to evaluate the software through the eyes of people who had not been exposed to it. So it was a really good rollout test. The Fisher's staff spent a couple of weeks preparing the necessary real-time PLC data links, and Inductive Automation then did the software implementation over a web link, and we were collecting data at the end of the first day. The second day we spent training and problem solving, and by the end of the second day we were able to use the data to identify improvement opportunities on the line. So it was really a successful implementation, and I felt that the people there, they grasped it very quickly. The feedback we got from the Fisher staff, it was really positive. The technical people felt comfortable supporting the system within just a couple of days. And operations management, they were able to provide operators with basic instruction at the line without interrupting production. And that's always valuable for, for manufacturing people. In the short time that we've been using the product, we've been able to identify and resolve issues that really were not apparent before. Downtime reports help us to focus and prioritize repairs. We've recognized and corrected equipment synchronization issues. We've recognized and corrected operational issues. And so what this really means to Diamond is we're being presented with actionable data in real time. We're not waiting for the 24 or 48 hours for the reports to come in. We can identify and prioritize improvement opportunities, and we're better equipped to identify best practices. We can make decisions based on unbiased automated information, and the system includes the scheduling tool that helps us to realize and plan for scheduling challenges. And to us, that was very, very important. And in just a couple of months, the Stockton system has helped us to improve OEE by about 15% on our Stockton, California canister line. In Fisher's, within just a couple of days of running, we gained about 5%, and we see that as just continued growth. So in general, we think that those numbers are a really good start, and they speak for themselves, and they speak volumes for the product. So we're pretty anxious to continue the rollout. We're going to have about 20 packaging processes, and we're going to roll it out to our processing processes, which we have probably in the 2 plants about 30 of those. So it's pretty exciting. So in that, I will turn it back over to you.
Bill, thanks a lot. I totally appreciate that. Just one question. You sort of answered it, but maybe you can expand on it if there's any more. You've used OEE. You got a couple of lines. You've shared some of the benefits of that. Certainly we're in a position now where being able to move forward on that is something that you're going to roll out. What do you consider a rollout timetable, if you have one? Or, I mean, you're getting benefits right now in what you've done, significant benefits. And it only took a couple of days to get people familiar to get benefit in Indiana. What do you envision over time for this kind of a rollout?
We're expecting to have our next production line in Stockton up on the system within the next month. And we're going to accelerate that, given our other activities in the project, in the plant. Fisher's probably the same. They're going to spend a couple of weeks getting used to this first line, getting their operators and management people used to looking at the reports, and we're expecting them to have another rollout in about a month. So within probably 6 months, we should have the majority of our packaging on the system.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate that. Just to give a little perspective on the speed that you're planning on. I'm through this slide up here partially because there are already questions about cost, and I want to just make an overall statement. about implementation considerations when you're looking at an ROI and the implementation cost. This is a quote from basically an MES buyer's guide for managing automation that came out in the end of 2010 about MES cost considerations. A new MES can cost from $150,000 to $300,000 for software license, plus 1.5 to 3 times that amount for customization services. I have a sneaking suspicion that if someone's looking at $750,000 to $1 million on implementation, that might give one pause on making any kind of decision to move forward. I will say that the overall, Bill mentioned he was certainly on a foundation of the Ignition platform, which he grew off of with the OEE downtime module. When you license by the server and when you bring in a situation that allows the flexibility of what Bill was saying, that sort of customized view, but it gives you the stability of a platform that you can innovate off of, we're talking about orders of magnitude less and orders of magnitude more in functionality. So it really is a different model using modern technology to allow you to leverage, Tom mentioned standard databases, do things that fit well with your IT people and use this platform to expand off of is really the recommendation that we have. And Ignition is really a software platform that offers that. Powerful tools, you can build MES solutions. It is cost effective. It does integrate extremely well with ERP and other software systems. It's mentioned by Tom, I've repeated it. It's IT friendly because it's based on all sorts of nomenclature and technology that is completely familiar to your IT department. It actually brings together and makes one team in the enterprise rather than a plant floor and IT who may or may not have worked well together in the past. It also is scalable because you're not paying more to add clients or tags. So take your consideration off of the increased cost for client and tag and put your attention on innovating to give yourself that competitive advantage. When it's cross-platform and it's customizable, it really doesn't matter in terms of compatibility with different versions of it, whether you're talking Windows, whether you're talking Linux, whether you're talking Mac. It allows you to have the flexibility to go from mobile to different platforms and use that as just the foundation that goes anywhere across the plants that you have, wherever they may be located. So I will say with that that the building of the MES modules was a great expansion for what we offer at Ignition, because the suite of modules gets companies up and running faster. The couple of days that that Bill's talking about is not unrealistic at all. You do have to deal with issues that Tom was mentioning. You do have to deal with acceptance and adoption and getting people on board and training. But when people start seeing the benefit of this kind of a system and the ease of use, that actually reduces your OE implementation costs because they're willing to go along. Pre-built user screens make it go faster. Web-based architecture means you install once and access the software anywhere. So I just wanted to summarize that because I know the focus wasn't on Ignition, but Ignition is really the foundation that we're building these MES modules on and the OEE downtime. So with that, we're moving into Q&A. We wanted to make sure we left a full 15 minutes for Q&A. There's a number of questions that have come up. So Tom, you were pointing to one I should start with here, so I can go second one. Okay, the question here from Miguel is, what is the common way to measure the quality factor of OEE? I mean, with sensors or differences. Tom, you want to take that question?
Well, it depends on your process. OEE, you can use kind of an implemented or one that they kind of talk about in the OEE formulas, and that is how many products or items did you start versus how many came off the end of your line. And if you started 1,000 and only 950 came off your line, then you have 50 waste. But in the real world, that doesn't always work. There's accumulation sections, product gets reworked, so taken off the line and put back on the line. So that can skew those numbers. So other ways to do it is if you have reject stations, you might have X-ray, you might have weigh scales, metal detectors, or any other type of quality vision systems. And where you have a rejector that rejects those, you can have counters at those locations and count that as waste. And then, just looking at your process, sometimes there's other, subcomponents that are coming in that are detected. In some cases, maybe it's a film or something like that. and you need to look at your process and say, you know, how can we detect this waste? And all else fails, and you can't detect it automatically, then you can have manual entries where, you know, you take all that waste, you put it in a bin or what have you, and the operator every so often weighs that waste or counts it or what have you, and manually enters that waste into the system. So there's a variety of ways to answer that question.
Thanks, Tom. This is from Nanda. I'm going to ask this one and probably maybe get a comment from you and also from Bill. In a new plant setup situation, it is okay to execute an MES implementation. However, in an existing plant, it could be some, it says discrete or a MES from another vendor could be running, and the customer may be in a complacent mood about that. How do we position OEE convincingly, and how do we integrate the OEE with existing systems and applications? I know that's kind of a long question, but one I think is of interest to, you know, are we talking rip and replace? Are we talking play alongside? What kind of migration strategy, what might one be looking at? I'll mention it to you, and then we'll have Bill comment on it.
Okay. Well, that's a good question, because that's probably the very, very common out there. Ignition can sit side by side with other systems. It's real friendly with talking to other databases and other ways of getting information. So you might have schedule information that comes from another system and then comes into the OEE downtime system. So you can tie them together and reduce double entry and so on and so forth. You know, I think it's important that companies are wanting to make changes. They're wanting to get data real time and that kind of thing to management, to production, and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to select a system that it starts heading you down the road of being flexible and being friendly to talk to other software and not being proprietary, and also being integrated, so you don't have to go to a separate program to look at your quality. You go to a separate program to look at your OEE downtime. So you can start bringing these together and have them collaborate together.
Great. Bill, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Tom. We had an old system at Diamond, and we chose to phase it out. So for a while, we just ran parallel systems. Over time, we incorporated those features into our ignition product, and we just slowly and gradually phased the old system out. We found that the integration with the ignition is very simple. We've got integration with our business system, with our MRP, and that went very quickly. Whereas with the old products, it tends to be a lot more cumbersome. You know, and another thing that we've noticed is the ignition has given us a lot more flexibility as far as user connections. It's very easy for us to set up a client. We don't require, you know, additional licensing to do so in our facility. So we get a lot of immediate benefit from it that I think the users will appreciate as soon as they get it in their facility.
Bill, thanks. I really appreciate that. I know I said that, and we do promote that when you're licensed by the server, you don't have to have a consideration about you're going to add another client. You're going to mess with some innovation that brings in a bunch of, you know, a couple thousand more tags, or you got 10,000 tags you're thinking about adding in with some new implementation. The whole goal here is to be so user-friendly that is not a consideration. You can innovate and do what you want with it once you've got it going. This is a question that I think I'm going to also ask to both of you. Jason has this question: how does the software connect to the production equipment, the hardware, to monitor uptime, downtime, performance, and quality? Tom, you want to start on that?
Yeah. Well, Ignition has a built-in OPC UA server. In fact, they were the first to have an OPC UA server, and then also I think they're the only one at this time that's cross-platform, meaning you can run it on Linux and Windows. And so that's a standard that allows connecting to plant floor equipment. It also supports OPC DA, so you can buy some other brand of server, OPC DA server, and it will communicate with that. So there's virtually thousands of different types of devices that it can connect to. And with that, we can read production counts. So the controllers on the line, we can read those production counts, and we can also read the downtime information. And from that, we derive the quality and production rates and all that. And Bill might be able to give a little bit more on what it took to make the changes in the field equipment to support the OEE.
Bill, some thoughts on that?
Sure. We've got a variety of equipment in the plant. Some of it has proprietary controls. So now, fortunately, manufacturers have pretty small Ethernet-ready hardware out there that you can install on a machine just as a data collector if you want. And we've chosen to do that in a couple of areas. We've done it to help prepare the groundwork for some of our OEE, but we're also doing it to monitor things like our fire system. We'll buy a small Ethernet-ready PLC and just use it as an input device for our SCADA system. So you can get pretty creative with these things. You can use bridge devices now to get serial devices onto Ethernet to make connections to some remote areas pretty convenient, and there are a lot of just Ethernet I/O devices that are out there that are compatible with the inductive automation drivers or other OPC servers that inductive automation ignition product is compatible with.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. Tom, just a quick question. Is ignition compatible? M. Lowe has the question, is ignition compatible with Allen Bradley RS Links OPC?
Yes, it is. So I will use the OPC DA to communicate to that.
Good, thanks. This question is from Aldo Castroni. It's a little bit longer, but I think it's relevant here. Is this tool mainly used for discrete manufacturing? What are the main considerations when implementing OEE in a continuous processing line, example, a chemical reactor? How do you measure loss of effectiveness in reprocessing loops?
Yeah, so you can apply it to processes. The main things that you need are how are you going to monitor your production? So process, you might be measuring liters or gallons using flow meters and such. You also can very easily measure downtime. Now, in continuous processes, a lot of times those cannot go down, and you might have bypass loops. So then you have to detect that, oh, you're in a bypass loop here, and we're not producing product, so we're going to count that as a downtime. So you have to take a look at different solutions like that, but it can be applied to that. And it's not, you know, you need to measure product at some point to be able to use your OEE, you know, to pick up maybe quality if you're going to apply quality to it and so forth. So if you have, you know, bad off product tank that you're going to, you might need a flow meter on that if you don't have one to pick up different items like that.
This is a little expansion on that question, but you started to answer it anyway. What plant floor control system changes are needed to implement OEE downtime?
Okay. At a minimum, you need to know what your outfeed production count is. That gives us our performance on our OEE, and then you also need the line state, the process or production line state. So is it producing product or not? At a minimum. From there, you can expand. You can start feeding line state saying, oh, we're not producing product for this reason. So, you know, our quality of product's off, or it could be, you know, this machine faulted, or a cap misfeed, or a jam, or so on and so forth. And then that will automatically detect that reason. So at a minimum that. And then from there, you can expand on it, pick up your in-feed count to your production line. And if you want to, you can have an in-feed count and an exit out-feed count on each machine or cell of your line or process. And what that allows you to do is detect one, the performance of that individual machine, but two, also quality on the individual machine. So you can be very, very basic at first. In a lot of cases, I would recommend starting out kind of basic, and then you can always expand from there really easily.
Good. Thanks. Appreciate that. So here's a question for Manuel. How does this software work when, Gary has a question, how does the software work when looking at an operation that is 80% manual as a process and only 20% machine dependent? Tom, can you comment on that?
Yes, that's a really good question. Well, it's going to require manual selections or input. So, for example, in that case, you might have to have operator terminals out there that the operators interface with, or maybe supervisors can do this as well. And they would make a selection. Can't produce product because of this reason right now. And that will be counted as downtime. And they would also manually enter in their production counts manually as well. And we have some facilities that are mixed, actually, that do, just like what you say, you have some automated and some manual.
Good, thanks. Jim Yang, I'm going to answer your question and actually give you a follow-up on it, but your question is there an online training module and the cost? And also, can you come to our facility to train several? I don't know if you have, we have a screen up with all of our team of account executives, Jim Meisler, Vanessa Garcia, Myron Hertling, Shane Miller. You see also contact information. I don't know if you're already working with one of those folks, but certainly I'm going to, they're also listening in. Turn it over to them to follow, make sure we have training in our facility. We have online. We have a variety of different ways. Bill mentioned having a really good experience with our team as regards our support and service. So support, service, and training under Travis Cox's direction is designed to get you up and running. So I think you can get, anybody can get any information they want from our team to find out the best way for you to move your team forward. And then I want to break off that into a question that I'm going to ask of Bill. How are people responding to your OEE system? Can you give me a sense of, you mentioned a couple of days in Indiana. What's the sense? Tom talks about transforming a little bit how people view it, and sometimes there's some resistance. What's your experience at Diamond?
Well, I think that I think that's a two-part question. The first system that we brought up on the OEE, we were a beta site for. So there was a little more skepticism at first because they didn't just see the product just take off and run and you get immediate benefit. So the attitude at first was a little biased, but once we got it, once the product stabilized and they started seeing real production data results, they really became believers. We started that line out at an OEE level of, it was low 60s, high 50s, low 60s, and now we're running it consistently in the high 70s, low 80s. So it really excites the people when they start to see that improvement. They really get the buy-in at that point, and they want to. It's almost like a challenge to them. So they really kind of get into it the more they see it. With the Fishers, it was a little more immediate because the product was stable. This was now a real production product. So they got to see immediate benefit. So it was a real eye-opener to them.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Bill, here's another question for you. We'll take one or two more questions, folks, and then we're going to wrap it up, but we'll follow up to those we get. This is a very active group today. I appreciate all of your questions. But this one's directed to you, Bill. What is an example of an actionable item found through implementing OEE at Diamond that was not apparent before? It's David's question.
Yeah, that's a really good question because we've actually gotten a couple of good examples. What doesn't seem to be apparent in a facility like ours are the momentary pauses in our filler, and one of them is due to just the scale is not tuned correctly or not cleaned properly, not being maintained as well as it could be. So the filler waits a few seconds each cycle. The operator doesn't really pick up that that's a significant issue. And in fact, when we first started into to looking at OEE, one of the mandates that I got initially was, well, anything that takes less than 5 minutes to recover from, we don't really want to see it because it's just going to be too much noise. Well, the way the system actually deals with this is very nice, because we not only see the total duration that accumulates during the course of a shift or a production run, but we also see the number of counts. So we see, with instances like that, over over an 8-hour run, you might have 10 minutes of downtime, which to us means like a pallet and a half of product. Even though when you're sitting there by the line watching it, you only see just a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there. It doesn't seem like it makes that big of an impact, but it really does.
Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate that. This is a little bit out of scope, Tom, but I'll give it a shot. You can give it a shot and answer, and then we'll add one more question and wrap up after this one. But this is from Sam. He says, this might be out of topic, but does ignition SCADA is capable to batch execution, sequential batching, sequence, workflow management, and inventory management?
The answer to that is yes. We have customers that are using it exactly like that. We don't have a module that plugs in and does batch today. That's probably something you'll see in the future. But we do have customers that have done the manual implementation of it within Ignition.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to ask one final question to each of you, and I guess I would say from your side, Bill, just an open-ended question. Any final? Clearly, we're doing this to try and educate folks that are interested in OEE downtime on: is it worth it? Is it not worth it? What does it take to do it? Any final thoughts you may have to share with the audience today?
What was really the key to our success is to approach this with a team. You've got to have people involved in a lot of different areas. So if you don't have a team to do the implementation, somebody that's technical, that can get the plant floor data prepared, even though there's not a lot to prepare, it's critical. If you don't have somebody in-house, get an integrator. And there are a wealth of qualified integrators out there that could support the plant in those efforts. On the IT side, it's nice to have a database and the hardware and the network in place to be able to implement. So you need support from IT and IS, and you need operations. They have to approach this with an open mind. So that's my best advice.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I also do want to say that from myself and Tom and all of us at Inductive Automation, we know that you're busy. We know that you work full time, and we really do appreciate you sharing with the audience today some of what your experience has been, because it really helps them as they're trying to make informed choices on which direction to go with their OEE downtime. And some of them are with Ignition and looking at expanding, and some of them are looking at Ignition and OEE at the same time. So thanks for your time, and thanks for your participation. And then with that, Tom, any final statement you want to make as we wrap up here today on advice or conclusion for today's webinar?
Yeah. I get a lot of customers contacting us and saying, how does this apply to our situation? And you have all types of situations, and there's solutions for all of them. I don't think I've come across one that couldn't be, a solution couldn't be created for them in one way or another that would help them out and improve efficiency and stuff. So you really don't need to tie into an ERP system. You don't need scheduling. You don't need work orders management. You might, but it's up to you. You need to determine whether that's going to be a benefit or not. You can some customers out there just strictly want to track downtime and not measure the OEE. Some customers might not use the quality portion. So really taking a look at what your situation is and seeing what you can use out of OEE makes sense for you and that's practical for you. And I believe that you can benefit from just doing that.
Tom, thanks. Just as we wrap up, I just want to say one thing in conclusion. I know you have on your screen contact information for Jim, Vanessa, Myron, and Shane. Call and schedule a demo. Take the time to actually, download it. Work with the information on Ignition if you're not familiar with Ignition. Get a demo of Ignition and OEE downtime. One of the things I think you will definitely find about everybody here at Inductive Automation is there is a strong commitment to making sure you can make an educated, informed choice, and when you make that choice, to make sure that it's very successful for you in your organizations. So with that, I leave that as an open-ended invitation to you to contact us, and we are at the conclusion of our time. Thanks so much for everyone's attention, and have a great day.